The hallways of Ridgewood High School were unusually noisy that morning, filled with the chatter of students hurrying to beat the first period bell. A group of seniors lingered near the trophy case, laughing loudly as a short, wiry janitor mopped the floor beneath their feet. His name was Marcus Hale. He was quiet, gentle, and always kept to himself. He moved with an almost delicate care, as though every step carried memories he was trying not to disturb. His uniform was faded, his work boots old but clean, and his eyes, soft brown and tired, held a depth no one ever bothered to look into. Today, though, the usual indifference turned into something worse. Because the moment Principal Gerald Whitmore, a tall, stout man with a flawless suit, polished shoes, and an ego twice the size of the school budget, saw Marcus mopping the hallway, his face twisted with irritation. And then it happened. His voice exploded across the hallways in a vicious, cutting roar. "You janitors are the reason this school looks terrible." The students froze. Some gasped. Most snickered. Several pulled out their phones. Marcus didn't flinch. He simply paused, wrung the mop gently, and continued working in silence. A few kids whispered cruelly, "Bro doesn't even talk. He's so weird. Why does he move like that? Bet he dropped out of school, too." Their laughter echoed. Marcus kept his head down. Across the hallway, Miss Danielle Rivers, a soft-spoken English teacher with kind eyes, watched the entire scene. She clenched her jaw, her hands curling into fists as she leaned closer to the science teacher beside her. She whispered just loud enough for the other teacher, Mr. Blake, to hear. If only he knew who that man really is. Principal Whitmore rolled his eyes dramatically. "He's just a janitor." He said the words slowly, like they tasted bitter in his mouth. The students laughed harder. Miss Rivers looked away, unable to bear it. Marcus remained silent. But inside, deep inside, something in him tightened just for a moment, and then loosened again, like he was forcing himself to let go of pain he had learned to live with. His breathing slowed, his emotions faded back into the shadows, and he kept mopping. As he did, a small group of freshmen walked right through the wet floor, smearing dirt across the tiles. One of them even kicked the mop bucket for laughs, splashing soapy water onto Marcus's uniform. The boy shouted, "Oops, my bad!" His friends cackled as they ran off. Principal Whitmore didn't say a word about that. He only muttered, "Useless," under his breath, loud enough for Marcus to hear. Marcus simply whispered, "I'll clean it up," and bent back down. Ridgewood High was located on the outskirts of Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a decent school with decent grades and an indecent amount of pride. Privilege ran thick in its hallways, especially under Principal Whitmore's leadership. Teachers feared him. Students mocked him behind his back, but respected his power. Parents adored him because he kept test scores high and the school's reputation higher. But no one thought twice about the janitors, especially Marcus. To most people, he was invisible. To Principal Whitmore, he was a blemish. To Miss Rivers, though, Marcus was a mystery, and she was one of the only people in that school who knew his truth. A truth that, if anyone else discovered, would rewrite everything. But for now, to everyone else, he was just the strange, quiet janitor who took the early morning shift so no one had to see him. And today he had clearly become the principal's newest target. As students settled into class, teachers prepared for their first lesson, and the morning announcements began. Marcus finished mopping the hallway, cleaned up the spilled water, and went to put away his equipment in the janitor's closet. a tiny, cramped room tucked between the cafeteria and the boiler room. He winced slightly as he removed his gloves. His right wrist was swollen, not from today, but from years of repetitive strain. Inside the closet was a small radio, a folded jacket, a notebook filled with tiny symbols and equations, and a worn black-and-white photograph of a smiling woman holding a toddler. Marcus touched the photo gently. His voice trembled softly. "Morning, Sarah. Morning, Eli." He placed the photo back on the shelf and began refilling the mop bucket for the next task. But he wasn't alone for long. A voice echoed down the hallway, sharp and condescending. "Hale, where are you? Hale!" Marcus froze. Principal Whitmore stomped up to the door. "There you are," he snapped. "Why is the cafeteria floor still dirty? We have a school board inspector coming today." Marcus blinked in confusion. I cleaned it yesterday evening, sir." "Well, it's filthy this morning." Marcus frowned softly. "Sir, students drop—" Whitmore cut him off with a raised hand. "I don't want excuses from a man pushing a mop." Marcus swallowed his words. The principal continued, arms crossed, smirking slightly. "You know, if you worked harder, maybe you wouldn't be stuck in a job like this. Ever think of that? That maybe you're the problem?" Marcus lowered his gaze. A short breath left his lips. "Yes, sir." Miss Rivers appeared at the end of the hallway, watching. Her heart twisted. She wanted to scream, "He's not who you think he is!" She wanted to tell Whitmore to stop. She wanted to protect the man who once protected so many others. But she couldn't. Not yet, because Marcus made her promise. Whitmore clapped his hands loudly. "Well, move, clean it." Marcus nodded and stepped past him. But as he did, the principal muttered, "People like you should be grateful we let you work here at all." Marcus stopped, just for a heartbeat. Whitmore didn't notice. He was too busy texting on his phone. But Ms. Rivers noticed. She saw how Marcus swallowed a quiet ache that no one else could see. She whispered to herself, "Why do they always mistake humility for weakness?" Marcus reached the cafeteria and began scrubbing the floor on his knees. His swollen wrist throbbed. Kids stepped around him without apology. Some dropped crumbs deliberately. One even filmed him for a TikTok captioned, "Our school janitor thinks he's in a movie." Through it all, Marcus remained calm. But inside, buried beneath layers of patience, there was a depth of emotion, grief, history, brilliance, and something powerful waiting to awaken. Later that afternoon, in the teacher's lounge, Ms. Rivers paced back and forth. Mr. Blake entered with a tray of coffee cups. "You look troubled," he said. She sighed heavily. Gerald humiliated Marcus again, right there in the hallway, right in front of students. Blake groaned. "He's obsessed with appearances." "Obsessed with power," she corrected. He sat beside her. "You think Marcus will be okay?" Ms. Rivers hesitated, then whispered, "He survived far worse. But still, this is not what he deserves." "Have you told Gerald who Marcus is?" "No," she said firmly. "Marcus made me swear not to. He said he wanted a quiet life, no attention, no cameras, no newspapers." Blake raised a brow. "Still hiding from the world?" "Not hiding, just healing," she said softly. Blake nodded slowly. "I wish people knew," Ms. Rivers said. "I wish they saw what he gave up, what he lost, and what he achieved." Blake frowned. "Achieved?" She looked at him sharply. "You didn't know?" "Know what?" Ms. Rivers froze. She had forgotten Marcus's identity wasn't common knowledge at all. Only she knew. And Principal Whitmore was the last person on earth who should. She leaned in, lowering her voice to a whisper. "Marcus Hale, is not just a janitor. Blake blinked. Then who is he?
Her voice became almost a breath. He's an inventor. An inventor? Yes, she swallowed. And a physicist. Blake's eyes widened. Ms. Rivers leaned closer. And he's the recipient of the 2014 Nobel Prize in Physics. The coffee cup in Blake's hand nearly slipped. You're joking. The world thinks he died, she whispered, but he didn't. He just disappeared. Blake stared at her in stunned silence, and outside the lounge, unseen, a shadow paused near the door. Someone had been listening. That evening, after the final bell rang and the school emptied out, the janitor's closet door creaked open. Inside, Marcus sat on a small stool. His hands trembled as he opened the worn notebook he always carried. Inside were equations, complex, elegant formulas, scientific sketches and theories miles beyond anything taught in Ridgewood High. And on the last page, circled, underlined, highlighted more times than the paper could bear, was written, "The Hale Energy Model, Revision 7. Marcus closed his eyes. His mind drifted back to a research lab, to flashing cameras, to applause, to his wife, Sarah, beaming with pride, to reporters calling him a genius, then to the car crash, the twisted metal, the white hospital lights, the cold doctors telling him Sarah and Eli didn't survive. His world shattered that day. He vanished quietly after the funeral, changed his name, moved states, took the simplest job he could find. Anything to avoid the spotlight, to avoid remembering who he used to be. The door suddenly opened. Marcus gasped and snapped the notebook shut. Ms. Rivers peeked inside. "Oh, sorry, Marcus, I didn't mean to scare you." He smiled lazily. "It's okay, Danielle. I brought you dinner." She handed him a takeout container. "I figured you skipped lunch again." He looked down. "Thank you. You didn't have to." "I know, but I wanted to." They sat quietly for a moment. "Marcus," she whispered, "you can't keep letting Gerald talk to you like this." He smiled sadly. "It's all right. He doesn't know me." "That's exactly the problem." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. "Please," he whispered, "don't tell anyone." "I won't," she said. "But Marcus, what happens when someone else finds out? Someone who won't protect you like I do?" Marcus sighed deeply. Then he whispered, "I just want peace, Danielle. That's all I want." But fate had other plans, because someone had overheard earlier, and tomorrow everything would explode. The next morning arrived colder than usual, a sharp wind brushing through the courtyard as students filed into the building. Marcus came early, as always, quietly sweeping leaves from the front entrance. His movements were soft, almost meditative. But today, eyes followed him. Whispers floated in the air. "Is that him? Are you sure? No way. That janitor? Bro, I Googled it. Same name, same middle initial. Why would a Nobel Prize winner clean floors?" Marcus didn't know why people were staring. He just kept sweeping. Inside the school, Principal Whitmore marched briskly toward the main office. He hadn't slept well. He was anxious about the school board's inspector visiting today. He needed the building spotless. Image was everything. And if anything went wrong, he already knew who he'd blame. Marcus. Miss Rivers tried to intercept him in the hallway. "Gerald, a moment." "Not now, Danielle. I have far more important things to handle." "It's about Marcus." That stopped him, but not kindly. "Oh, God. Is he whining now?
Did he go crying to the teachers because I told him the truth yesterday? Her eyes narrowed. The truth? You humiliated him. I corrected an employee. You insulted a man who... He raised a hand sharply. Let me guess. You're going to tell me he has hidden layers. He's special. He's misunderstood. I scoffed. He's a janitor. He cleans. That's the end of the story, Danielle. She tried to speak, but he walked past her muttering, "Some people just don't know their place." Those words would haunt him soon. At 10:30 a.m., the school board inspector, Mrs. Harriet Lockwood, arrived for the walkthrough. Short, sharp, and serious, she carried a clipboard and a reputation for shutting down underperforming schools. Principal Whitmore straightened his tie. "Mrs. Lockwood, welcome to Ridgewood High. Everything is spotless, I assure you. Our staff is very disciplined." As they walked the halls, she nodded politely until they reached one corner near the cafeteria. Papers littered the floor. A trash can was knocked over. Liquid was spilled underfoot. Mrs. Lockwood's eyebrow rose. "This area is unacceptable." Whitmore stiffened. This wasn't like this earlier." "Who is responsible for this section?" she demanded. He swallowed. "The janitor." She crossed her arms. "Bring him. Now." He didn't hesitate. Whitmore stormed through the halls, students watching as he scanned the rooms with fury. He found Marcus wiping a window near the library. "You!" Whitmore barked. Marcus turned calmly. "Yes, sir?" "Drop whatever you're doing and come with me. Now!" Students looked up from their lockers. Some filmed, some whispered nervously. Marcus followed quietly. When they reached the cafeteria hallway, Mrs. Lockwood pointed to the mess. "Is this your assigned area?" Marcus looked at it, confused. "Yes, but I cleaned this earlier." Whitmore's voice exploded. "So you admit it?" "Sir, you embarrassed me in front of the school board. You made me look incompetent." Lockwood interrupted sharply. "Mr. Hale, why would you leave this mess?" Marcus swallowed. I didn't. When I left, it was clean." Whitmore laughed mockingly. "Of course it was. And ghosts messed it up, right?" Students nearby laughed. Marcus stayed silent. Mrs. Lockwood frowned. "Do you have any explanation?" Marcus breathed slowly, then shook his head. "No, ma'am." Whitmore clapped once, loudly. "That's it. I've had enough. You're done here, Hale." The hall fell silent. Fired. Just like that. Whitmore stepped closer, smirking. "Turn in your keys. Pack your things. You're finished." A small crowd had gathered, phones out, recording. Marcus looked down at his hands, barely whispering. "All right." Ms. Rivers rushed to the scene, breathless. "Gerald, stop! You can't fire him!" "I just did." "Marcus didn't do this. Look at the footprints. Those are student sneakers. Someone knocked it over after he left." Whitmore's eyes rolled. "Even if he didn't, I've been looking for an excuse." Ms. Rivers stiffened. "An excuse?" Whitmore smirked cruelly. "This school deserves better representation, and frankly, he makes the place look unprofessional." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Mrs. Rivers felt her blood boil. "Gerald, you have no idea who you're talking to." "Yes, I do!" he shouted. "A nobody!" Marcus flinched, but only slightly. And that was it. Ms. Rivers snapped. "That nobody is—" Before she could speak, another voice cut through the crowd. Not loud, not angry, but authoritative. "Mr. Whitmore, I believe I can explain." Everyone turned. It was Mrs. Lockwood. She stared at Whitmore coldly. "I pulled the security footage." Whitmore blanched. "You what?" She gestured to the screen on her tablet. A group of students appeared, laughing, shoving, knocking over the trash can, dancing around, kicking papers. Marcus was nowhere in sight. "Innocent," she declared flatly, "and you," she pointed at Whitmore, "jumped to punish him without evidence." Gasps echoed across the hallway. Students looked at Whitmore with disgust. Miss Rivers whispered, "Serve him right." But Lockwood wasn't done. She turned to Marcus. "Mr. Hale, why didn't you defend yourself?" Marcus lowered his gaze. "It wouldn't have changed anything." She studied him carefully. "There's something about you," she said quietly. "Something familiar." Whitmore snatched the tablet. "Who cares? He's still fired." "No," Mrs. Lockwood said firmly. "He is not. With all due respect." "With no respect," she cut him off. "You have displayed unprofessionalism, discrimination, and gross misconduct." But before she could say more, a timid freshman stepped forward. "Mrs. Lockwood, ma'am, I think you should see this too." He held up his phone, played a video. Not of the trash can. No, it was Marcus earlier that morning, offering to help an elderly parent carry a heavy box. Marcus refusing to let the student record him to go viral. Marcus fixing a broken locker for a girl crying because she couldn't open it. Marcus helping a boy with a wheelchair through a stuck door. The video caption read, "Our janitor is actually the kindest person in this school. Y'all treat him so badly for no reason." The hallway went silent. Students watched the clips. Some looked ashamed. Some wiped their eyes. Whitmore felt sweat gathering at his temples. But then Mrs. Lockwood's eyes narrowed at the screen, and she froze. She zoomed into Marcus's face. Recognition struck her like lightning. "No," she whispered. "It can't be." Whitmore blinked. "What now?" She stepped toward Marcus slowly, reverently. "Sir, I know who you are." Marcus stiffened. The hallway went breathless. Mrs. Lockwood inhaled. "You are Dr. Marcus Elijah Hale, Nobel Prize laureate, physicist, inventor of the Hale energy model." Students gasped. Teachers gasped. Someone's backpack fell to the floor. Marcus closed his eyes. Mrs. Rivers whispered, "I'm so sorry, Marcus. I didn't want this." Marcus whispered back, "It's okay. It was bound to happen." Mrs. Lockwood placed a trembling hand over her mouth. "The entire world thought you died in that car accident." Marcus nodded sadly. "Part of me did." She swallowed hard. "But why would you work here, as a janitor?" He looked around at the faces watching him. And then, with quiet vulnerability, he spoke. "Because after I lost my wife and son, I couldn't live in the spotlight anymore. I needed silence. I needed something simple, something with routine, something that didn't remind me of the life I had or the one I lost." The hallway fell silent. Even Whitmore was stunned into speechlessness. Mrs. Lockwood whispered, "You didn't deserve what happened yesterday." Marcus looked down. "No one does." Mrs. Lockwood turned toward Whitmore. "Principal Whitmore, I will be filing an immediate report with the school board." He stiffened. "What report?" "A recommendation for your termination." His jaw dropped. "What? For what?" "For harassment, abuse of authority, discrimination, and," she held up the tablet, "public humiliation of a distinguished scientist and employee." Students murmured in shock. Whitmore's voice cracked. "You can't do that. The board wouldn't dare." "Oh, they will," she replied, "especially when the local news hears that a Nobel Prize winner was mopping floors in your school while you insulted him." Whitmore looked around desperately. Marcus, please tell her not to fire me. You know I didn't mean, I was just, it was..." Marcus looked at him with calm, steady eyes. "Mr. Whitmore, yesterday you told me I should know my place." Whitmore swallowed. Marcus continued softly, "Maybe it's time you learned yours." Whitmore's knees nearly buckled. Mrs. Lockwood signaled to the security officer, "Escort Mr. Whitmore to his office. He will pack his things immediately." As Whitmore was led away, students filmed him, the same way they filmed Marcus yesterday, only this time they weren't laughing at the janitor, they were laughing at the principal. Karma had arrived. Hard. Later that afternoon, the school gathered in the auditorium. Mrs. Lockwood stepped onto the stage with Marcus beside her. Students fell silent. Teachers sat straighter. Phones were recording. She spoke. "Everyone, this is Dr. Marcus Elijah Hale. Many of you know him only as our janitor, but today you learned the truth. He is a brilliant scientist, a Nobel Prize winner, a man who changed the world." Miss Rivers wiped a tear. Marcus stepped forward. His voice trembled gently, but carried strength. He looked up at the crowd. "Every person you meet is carrying a story you know nothing about." Silence. Marcus continued, "Respect isn't about titles or uniforms or salaries. It's about humanity and kindness and humility." Some students sniffled. A few teachers looked ashamed. "I came here to disappear, but you all reminded me that hiding doesn't heal pain. People do." The auditorium was still. Then slowly, applause began. Soft at first, then louder, then thunderous. Students stood. Teachers stood. Miss Rivers cried openly. When the applause faded, Mrs. Lockwood spoke again. "We would like to offer Dr. Hale a new position, Director of Innovation and Scientific Outreach for the entire district." Gasps. Marcus blinked, stunned. He shook his head gently. I don't know if I'm ready for that." He looked at Miss Rivers. She smiled warmly. "You're more ready than you think." Mrs. Lockwood replied gently, "You can take all the time you need." Marcus looked at the crowd, the young faces, the hopeful eyes, the people he had once felt invisible around. Something inside him softened. He whispered, "Okay." We never truly know someone's past, their pain, or their potential. So never look down on anyone, because the person you underestimate today may be the one who changes the world tomorrow. If you want more content like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our videos. Thanks for watching.